and that landlords still received rental income. However, over 9,400 eviction filings were processed in municipal court during this same time. It's 9,400 families that face housing insecurity, in addition to all the other challenges that COVID has brought to their door. And we know that evictions disproportionately impact women, most often women of color and single mothers. It has a devastating impact on the entire family. February, I laid out my equity agenda, an agenda that calls out racism and discrimination where it exists and our plans to address it. It includes reducing infant mortality by making sure Black babies reach their first birthday and beyond, ensuring access to high-quality early childhood education, regardless of zip code, police reform to ensure every resident feels safe in their neighborhood, increasing the availability of affordable housing, and working to reduce evictions where we know Black mothers and their families are disproportionately impacted. This morning, I'm pleased to announce that the city received $26.8 million in federal funding designated specifically for rent and utility assistance, recognizing that the lowest income households are at the greatest risk for long-term instability. 60% of the funding will be targeted to households at less than $42,000 for a family of 4 in annual income. The remaining dollars will be available to households that make less than $67,000 for a family of 4. We're moving quickly to put this funding to use and keep Columbus families in their homes. We will immediately distribute $10 million to our trusted partner, Impact Community Action, for the continuation of the Hope Fund program. Impact has been a great partner to the city, serving our neighbors in implementing programming funded through the CARES Act this past year. Additionally, the city recognizes the pandemic has created additional health concerns and increased household instability for our most vulnerable mothers and newborns. So we will be setting aside $3 million for our community's public-private partnership around reducing infant mortality, Celebrate One. Celebrate One will distribute the emergency rental assistance funds to community partners who will provide rental and utility assistance to families at risk of high infant mortality and maternal health complications. This funding will allow Celebrate One and community partners to continue serving families who participated in the Healthy Beginnings at Home program, a research project that helps shine a light on the impact of adequate housing on infant mortality and showed tremendous success. This is just the starting point. Over the coming weeks, we'll be working with trusted community partners to plan for distribution of the remaining funds. We couldn't ask for a better partner in this work than an incredible housing advocate who chairs the Development Committee and many others on Columbus City Council. It's my pleasure to introduce our great partner in this work, Councilmember Shayla Faber.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, and thank you to everyone joining us this morning. I'm honored to be here today to acknowledge the additional $26.8 million for rental assistance the City of Columbus has received that will help families continue to stay in their homes during the pandemic. The past year has been extremely difficult for many in our community. The economic losses caused by the pandemic have had a significant impact on housing stability at a time when the ability to remain at home is an important matter of health and safety. Although these times have been hard, we are very fortunate in Columbus to have received dollars from the federal government to help stabilize businesses, nonprofits, and families in our city. Many thanks go to our congressional delegation for their steadfast commitment to getting these dollars to our community. Last year, we were able to hold off on a large wave of evictions by funneling over $16 million in tenant-based rental assistance to over 7,600 families in critical need. Many thanks to our partners, including Impact Community Action, Columbus Urban League, Physicians Care Connection, and many others for their incredible work in getting these much-needed dollars to assist our tenants and landlords. I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge some of our other incredible partners, including the Legal Aid Society of Columbus and Columbus Mediation Services for their work at Eviction Court. These organizations have been down at the convention center where eviction hearings are being held, assisting tenants through this uncertain legal process and helping direct them to the necessary resources to avoid devastating evictions during an already challenging time. What we have learned since last June is that it takes a great deal of partnership and collaboration to get these dollars out the door. With this next round of funding, we look forward to continuing to refine the process that was established last summer for getting these dollars out to our tenants and landlords, and hopefully bring in additional community partners to assist in this process. The need is still strong. The pandemic is not over, and we must continue these efforts to provide our families in need with much needed stability during these uncertain times. I look forward to continuing to work with our partners to outline how we will allocate these next round of dollars, including with the Department of Development and Director Michael Stevens, who has continued to help lead the city in these efforts. Director Stevens, I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Favor, Mayor Ginther. It's great to be here today to continue this conversation about meeting those needs of the individuals in our community who've been devastatedly impacted by this pandemic. I'm Mayor and Chair Favor, you guys have really done a great job recognizing those partners that we have in the community who've been helpful in getting these dollars out. I think it's important that we continue to get funding out. We've set up a process to get these dollars out and to do that, but it's also just as important for the remaining dollars that we're agile and we make sure that if there's any neighbors of ours who are falling through the gaps, that we make those changes and address those needs as well. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions that might come up, but I will wrap up and hand it off to Ms. Green.
Good morning. My name is E.C. Green. I want to thank you for the opportunity to address everyone this morning. I am with Physicians Care Connection. We are an organization of physicians and other experts that are dedicated to optimizing the health of those who are vulnerable in this community, and we are an affiliate organization of the Columbus Medical Association. We specialize in the health and related social needs that directly influence the quality of life for people who are vulnerable in this community. And we do this by providing high-touch care coordination. For people who are vulnerable, this type of coordination, it requires significant financial and human resources. This pandemic has become much more than a health crisis, as its unforeseen challenges have negatively impacted human health, the economy, and political factors. Our residents are feeling the impact of this pandemic with unemployment, reduction in work hours, shifting to the virtual learning environment for their students and children, amongst other community conditions that previously existed, such as access to care and food. Stimulus income provided by the federal government for individuals has been exhausted, and even with the recent relief package, people are still behind with rent and other bills. Housing instability has been a concern for this community before the pandemic. Unfortunately, the pandemic has only exacerbated those circumstances. The need for these dollars goes way beyond an emergency. For many of our neighbors, it is a difference between life and death. There is a strong correlation between housing and health. We have a top-notch shelter system. However, keeping families in their home is critical. The loss of a home both impacts the health and finances of a family and may have long-term effects on one's rentability. We celebrate today as the new dollars will allow frontline organizations like ours to continue to work with at-risk families in this community to stay in their homes. They are our neighbors, friends, family, and loved ones. The return on community investment will be significant from this effort. Additionally, I'm excited that there are organizations working together to explore a long-term solution for housing stability in our community. This solution is imperative. Last year, the infusion of these dollars for rent and utility assistance allowed us to help a pregnant mother who, after receiving a 3-day notice to leave the premises, began living in her car after she experienced a reduction in hours from work. It allowed us to help grandparents who suddenly found themselves the guardians of 3 grandchildren. And as they shifted to this new reality and costs associated with that reality, the grandmother lost her job, further exacerbating their income. She applied for unemployment, but during that process of receiving those dollars fell 2 months behind in rent. It also allowed us to form a relationship with the landlord and assist their tenants with the completion of applications for assistance. Later, that same landlord contacted us to help their son, who was also facing eviction. I'd like to commend the partners that have worked with us to quickly shift to get dollars out to the community so that we can keep them from experiencing eviction. We will continue to face the effects and challenges of this pandemic for years to come. However, today, I am thankful for the investment from the city that will help thousands of families remain in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, EC, for those powerful examples. This isn't just numbers and statistics. It's about families. It's about personal stories. And the one thing we're all focused on, all of us, whether you're a landlord, tenant, public health professional, physicians, or elected officials, is family stability. We know that family stability is absolutely critical, not only for better birth outcomes, but for better child development environments. And in the midst of the global pandemic, it could never be more important, keeping families in their homes while also taking care of landlords that are doing the responsible thing in working collaboratively with us. I know there's light at the end of the tunnel with COVID-19 vaccines, and at this time of year, I would expect the city to be well on our way to recovery a year from now. I do want to thank Councilmember Faber, she mentioned this earlier, but we wouldn't be here today in announcing this fantastic investment into family stabilities in neighborhoods throughout our city without the leadership of our Congresswoman, Joyce Beatty, Congressman Troy Balderson, Congressman Steve Stivers, our 2 U.S. senators who all supported this, Senator Rob Portman and Senator Sherrod Brown, worked together in a bipartisan way to put families first here in our community, and I want to thank them for that. Right now, at this moment, families are suffering, and we must do all that we can to help them with their most basic needs. Now, we'll take a few questions. We're going to use the raise hand function. I know you were sent instructions, but let's go through them. You should see a hand icon on the bottom right corner of your screen. Click on the hand, and you will see a hand next to your name in the attendee list, and that's how we'll know that you've raised your hand. We'll unmute you to ask questions. Please tell us your name and what media outlet you're with. After your question's been addressed, please click the hand next to your name to turn off the function. If you have additional questions, please click it again. We also have Bo Chilton from Impact Community Action, President and CEO of Impact, with us, and Director Maureen Stapleton from Celebrate One with us this morning to also answer any additional questions or more details about these investments here today. My guess is that some of you have questions related to other issues than rental assistance, and I'll be happy to answer those as well. But out of consideration for our panelists, I ask that you hold those until we have answered all questions about today's announcement around housing assistance so that Ms. Green, Director Stevens, and Councilmember Favor may choose to go on to other things while I answer questions from the press about anything that's on their mind. I believe the first question is from Bethany Bruner. And Bethany, what's your question about housing assistance?
My question is actually about an unrelated topic, so I will yield the floor until we are ready for those questions.
Thank you, Bethany. Tom Bosco, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, and I'm in the same boat as Bethany. We appreciate you answering questions about other topics, and I'll hang on until we're done with rent assistance.
Yes, sir. Are there any questions from the press regarding rental assistance? John Fuddy, good morning.
Morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, my question was for Mr. Chilton. We spoke yesterday about the Hope Fund and all the partners involved in that. And I want to make sure that the anticipated rental assistance we talked about yesterday, did it include these funds?
No, it did not, Mr. Fuddy. I was not at liberty to discuss that with you yesterday. So I simply sent you the press advisory. So the dollars being announced today are in addition to the ones that we discussed yesterday.
Okay. Are these from the most recent stimulus package that Congress approved? That the source of this money?
Yes, they are, John. And just to follow up on your question and Mr. Chilton's response, I think it's important for us to remind folks that we've invested more than $16 million in rental assistance and utility assistance since March. But we all know the funds for rental assistance went very quickly, indicating, I think, how great that need is. We've not turned off utilities since the pandemic began, but that isn't sustainable long term. The Department of Utilities has been working to pay down the accounts of our most vulnerable residents, and these additional funds will help with that. And I do want to thank Director Stevens. In the midst of everything else going on last year, he was our point in the administration to make sure that those CARES Act dollars were spent efficiently, appropriately, and got to folks in the greatest need during a very challenging year, coordinating with all of our departments. And he is again running point on this program, on this most recent appropriation. So wanted to acknowledge him. I think our next question, unless you have another one, John, is from Mike McCarthy.
Mr. Mayor, good morning, but I also defer unless there are any other questions on the topic you're currently discussing. Thank you for taking the question, though.
Sure thing. Good morning, Nick.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Nick. Good morning.
I guess one of the things we've been hearing about is the problem of people with outstanding debts from rent that's just been deferred. So is this going to basically kind of pay that down or try to reach agreements with landlords? How exactly will this work where the rubber meets the road?
I'd be happy. Councilmember Favor, would you like to offer any comments? I can also turn to Director Stevens, maybe Mr. Chilton, and then in particular for Healthy Beginnings at Home, either Director Stapleton or Ms. Green. But Councilmember, would you like to make any comments?
As well as Director Stevens or perhaps Bo for the technical piece. But even last year with the $16 million that got out the door, we were able to provide assistance, back assistance to residents who found themselves in that very predicament that you're describing right there. And so, as we stated earlier today, we're still working through the technical aspect of how these dollars will get out the door. But we hope that the same process the same flexibility will be there. The one thing that has not been mentioned this morning is that with these dollars, Mayor Ginther acknowledged that we are truly committed to family stabilization. And, that includes landlords and tenants, right? And so these dollars do allow landlords to apply on behalf of their tenants who may find themselves in this situation where they're unable to pay the rent. And so that is a bit of a game changer this go round. I am personally excited about that because that gives that flexibility that we need there. One of the obstacles that we faced last year was making sure that the message was out there to all landlords that the assistance, the dollars were available. And now that the community knows that the city is serious about having a strong tenant-based rental assistance that also includes legal assistance and mediation available, I hope that this round will be even smoother and we can get those dollars out even quicker this go round. But let me turn it over to Director Stevens to fill in the gaps of the technical part of your question.
Great, thank you, Chair Favor. That was a really great point you made. I will let you know that these dollars can be used to pay rent that has been past due all the way back to March of 2020. But what's different with this round of funding is it's also prospective. So if you have lost a job and been impacted by COVID and can't make future payments, you can get funding to make those payments up to 12 months. So that's really important to, one, reduce the caseload of evictions and provide some little more security and housing for our residents.
Director Stapleton or Mr. Chilton, Ms. Green, any additional comments regarding that question?
I'll just add that we're very grateful to all of our congressional leaders who supported this legislation, and especially to the city of Columbus for being proactive. These dollars will give us a little more flexibility, as they said, to not only pay back rent, but future rent for those who are most vulnerable, while they have the opportunity to upskill and training so that they can make sure that they're marketable for the recovery. And so we'll be working in a holistic fashion to help tenants achieve self-sufficiency.
And Mayor, the only thing that I would add is that, after the study and the work that we did with Healthy Beginnings at Home, we've, as the mayor indicated, there is a total nexus, a total connection to adequate housing and better birth outcomes. And so this money will allow us to allow people to get housing now that are currently in crisis, or support those who we've been supporting through the system to get them additional months. When a baby's born, a baby should be in an adequate housing environment. And these dollars will allow us to continue that and expand that work for the next year. Very, very critical. And we are elated at the amount that we will be able to help moms in the coming months.
Thank you, Director. Great, critically important points. And we know we have a great model, a proven model to be able to fund and expand at this point because of the work at Celebrate One. Our next question, I believe, is from, is it Jamie Ostroff?
Yeah, Jamie Ostroff, I'm with NBC4. It is an off-topic question, so I can hold until all of the rent-related questions are asked.
Thank you, Jamie. John, did you have another question on rental assistance, or was it off topic?
Yeah, I did have one quick one. And maybe this again would be for Mr. Chilton, but I'm curious about when these funds will be available to individuals who apply.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I can say that we're still working through some of the details with the city, but with the funding that we currently have, we will be operational on February 8th. to start taking applications. And I believe, John, I gave you the address where people can apply.
You did, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, John. Is that all the questions that we have for rental assistance this morning? I'm going to give reporters one last chance, and then I'll relieve our panelists. My guess is they have many other things to do, but you're welcome to stay as well. But be careful what you wish for. You might get asked a question about something that you might not be prepared for. Just another day in the life of a mayor. If no other questions on rental assistance, I think we'll go back to, I should ask if anybody has any closing comments, anything that folks would like to wrap up on. Maybe I'll give Councilmember Faber the ability to wrap up our conversation about rental assistance and housing. But I want to thank Mr. Chilton, Ms. Green, Director Stapleton, Director Stevens, and obviously Councilmember Faber for joining us for this important conversation this morning. But Councilmember, you want to wrap up this, and then I'll go deal with the other questions.
Thank you so much, Mayor. It truly has been my honor to be here this morning. And I once again want to thank all of our housing partners, the Department of Development, for their swift response and working in a collaborative way with my office to ensure that we're continuing to put families first during the pandemic. And once again, you know, I want to make sure that our landlords know that we're advocating on your behalf as well. And so if you do have some additional questions about what that process will look like starting in February, please do not hesitate to reach out to our office or to the Department of Development, because we want to make sure that you are able to stay fully stabilized during this time, as well as tenants. So this is my plea, before you make that filing, please reach out to us, and we want to make sure that those dollars are in hand and that you can continue to live a productive life, and our tenants, our residents can continue to be stabilized during this unprecedented time. We thank you all for your presence today, and look forward to working collaboratively with the Department of Development in 2021. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Councilmember. Great message to close us with. And again, panelists can stay if they'd like and be part of this, but also want to relieve them to get back to making sure people stay in their homes, which everybody's actively working on. Our first question goes back to Bethany Bruner, and I'll try to do these back in the order folks raise their hands, but be happy to answer any and all questions folks have this morning. Bethany?
I appreciate it. I wanted to ask about the dismissal of Chief Quinlan. I wanted to ask specifically about the timing. There were calls to remove Chief Quinlan this past summer following the protests, and again in December. So why on January 28th? And then I also wanted to ask, you know, in looking at the comments following and the reaction following yesterday's announcement, there are a lot of calls that you also should step down from community members. I'm wondering what your response is to that.
Well, really, ultimately, the decision to ask Chief Quinlan to step aside it became clear and apparent to me that he couldn't successfully implement the reform and change I expect in the community demands. Columbus residents have lost faith in him and Division's ability to change on its own. Chief Quinlan understood, and he agreed to step back so the city can move forward. And as of today, he is a deputy chief. There isn't, I think, any one instance or inflection point where this decision was made. It was cumulative. You know, there were some successes, clearly. I think 71% of the recommendations of the Safety Advisory Commission have been implemented or in process of being implemented. But I had to make a tough decision, and I made that decision, and the safety director shared that decision with the chief yesterday. With respect to comments and criticism, as you can imagine, as the mayor of the 14th largest city in America, there's criticism that comes my way every day for decisions I make and decisions I do not make. But I respect the will of the people of Columbus. They have elected and re-elected me, and we will have another election in 2023, and the people of Columbus will decide whether or not the equity agenda, police reform, and focusing on our opportunity neighborhoods is direction they want to continue to go in or in a different direction. I trust the people of Columbus. Our next question goes to Tom Bosco.
A criticism of Deputy Chief Quinlan was that he was too close to the department he was set to lead. Does that mean did you pick the wrong person a year or so ago? And does the next chief have to come from outside of Columbus police ranks?
You know, I feel very strongly that we do need an outside perspective and a leader from the outside to help us change the culture at the Division of Police. I accept full and total responsibility for the chief I named previously, and I accept full responsibility for the next chief that I will name in the coming months. Our next question is from Mike McCarthy. Good morning, Mike. We'll come back to Mike and go to Jamie Ostroff. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, Mayor. A year ago, the city paid 6 figures for a nationwide search only to land on the person who had already been serving in your own backyard as interim chief. So why are you going this same route the second time around? And how can you assure the people of Columbus that this time doing the same thing will be more successful?
Well, I think clearly what we have seen in the last year or so, but I think through more recent history, is how critically important it is to have the right leader leading the Division of Police. I believe the investment we made before was worthwhile. And I believe that the new expedited search will use a lot of the information and tools and resources that were gathered through the last search. By the way, the first time the city of Columbus even looked outside for external candidates when we went through that process. It'll be an expedited timeline and cost far less, but I believe it is a very worthwhile investment because we need to make sure that we have the right leader who's going to help us change the culture at the Division of Police and lead this division forward to better meet and exceed the community's expectations. Our next question is from Lacey Crisp. Good morning, Lacey.
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you for taking my question. There's been a lot of unusual things that have happened in the last year. Tom Quinlan obviously was your choice. You made it clear how you were going to run the city this summer, and I think the chief most likely didn't make a lot of decisions without running them past you. So is this failure on you, or who is that on?
Well, I think I've already said, Lacey, but I'll say it again. I am the mayor of the 14th largest city in America. I accept full responsibility for all the decisions that leaders within the city of Columbus and the Division of Police make. That is my job. I am the mayor. People don't hire mayors for excuses and explanations. They hire them for leadership, and in this case, changing and reforming the Division of Police. I'm committed to doing that, and I accept full responsibility for the hiring of the last chief, and I will accept full responsibility for hiring the next chief. Our next question is from Maria Durant. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Mayor. You had mentioned that you would like to be looking outside the department for a new police chief. What specific qualities are you looking for? You mentioned somebody who would implement change. You just said that Police Chief Quinlan did about 71% of those changes implementing in the department. So what specific changes are you looking for, and what specific qualities do you want in this new police chief?
I'm looking for a transformational leader, a change agent that knows how and has a demonstrated record and history of changing culture, bridging the divide between the police and the community, and a commitment to making sure that officers are held accountable. You are right, 71% of the recommendations are in process or have been implemented. But what we really need at this point, in addition to the Civilian Review Board and all the other changes and reforms that we've done with respect to external oversight, is really a transformational leader that can delve in and change the culture of the division of police internally. And so I'm going to be looking for that type of strong leader with a track record of doing that in our next chief. Our next question goes to Tom Bosco.
With all the attention this issue has gotten in the past year or so and other controversies in the police department, do you think that will have any effect on the search? In other words, do you think controversy and problems that have been going on might scare qualified candidates away, frankly?
I think there couldn't be a better time for looking for what I just described to Maria, a change agent, a transformational leader. I mean, this is a city and a community that is demanding change and reform. First ever Civilian Review Board, all the other additional changes that we have made and reforms that we started making far before last year. I think that, my vision of taking us from a 20th century law enforcement agency to a 21st century community policing organization will be very appealing to some dynamic law enforcement leaders around the country that are interested in helping to drive that change. So I am very optimistic about our prospects because I think this community is demanding change and reform and will support our next chief as she or he leads it. I think, Lacey, do you have another question?
Yeah, Mayor, I was wondering, since we just went through this process about a year ago, can you kind of describe what the process is going to look like? How many months is it going to be until we have a new chief in place? DC Woods is going to be interim. Will he be allowed to apply for the permanent position? How much money is this going to cost the taxpayers? And is the process itself going to be the same? Are we going to have community meetings? Are we going to have, the forum that we had last time? Can you kind of explain to our viewers what their input is going to look like this time comparatively to last time?
Well, we haven't finalized all those details yet, Lacey, but surely we will in the days ahead and be happy to share all those details. You're right. We went through an exhaustive search. First time, as I said, ever that we've looked outside the division of police, extensive community engagement and conversations. So I think we'll be able to glean a lot of information from folks that participated in the process the last time around, but clearly based on the events that have happened in the last year, there might be additional community input that we want to make sure is incorporated, engaged with that. So there's an awful lot of the search process that we can use that we won't have to repeat, but there might be some elements that are critical to make sure we're making the most informed choice in our next chief, but we'll share those details in the days ahead. Our next question is from Bethany Bruder.
Thank you, Mayor. You talked about wanting to have somebody who transforms the culture of the division. As we've dealt with the last 6 or 8 months, I've talked with people in the community who say they want somebody who will bring that change, but who also understands Columbus and this city and what we have been through historically and even within recent history. How concerned are you about the learning curve for somebody who would be external coming in and learning this city, learning its history, learning the problems? We have a rising homicide rate, rising violence across the city, to help make that change immediately versus 6 or 8 months down the line once they get to know the city.
So what was your question again?
How concerned are you about that learning curve and having somebody who does not understand Columbus and the recent history and the lengthy history that the city has had with its division of police?
I'm not concerned at all. I think there are going to be outstanding leaders from around the country who have been part of transformational change and change cultures within divisions in other places around the country. And I really believe that it is our division's job and the community's job to help that new leader understand our history and understand where we were, where we are, how we got here, but also provide us some sometimes, having that outside perspective, particularly if they have a history of making changes and reforms that, quite honestly, we have not been able to do internally, could be a very healthy, objective, and independent way forward, which is what the people of Columbus expect and deserve. Our final question, I believe, unless there are others, I've got just another couple of minutes. Jamie Ostroff. Jamie, you get the last one.
Thank you. How much did this have to do with Andre Hill's death? And if it did, why now? Why not earlier?
Well, as I said before, it was a whole series of things. It wasn't any one thing. And, what was very clear to me as I spoke with community leaders, faith leaders, folks from across the board in our community, is that they had lost confidence in the chief's ability to change the culture and make the changes and reforms we wanted to make at the Division of Police. But it was a cumulative course of things. It was not any one thing. Why the timing is important is the way our system works is the director needed to notify the chief by, I believe, the end of the day yesterday, if he was not going to be, after his probationary period ends, if he was not going to be appointed to a 5-year term. That's why the decision was made when it was made. Got just a few more minutes. I'll try to catch as many of these as I can. I'm trying to see who was up next. Maria.
Thank you, Mayor, for taking my question again. Real quickly, you had mentioned you would be looking for someone outside the department. Is there a city that you want to emulate or that you are looking to shape Columbus after? And are you getting any guidance from any other city?
Well, as you can imagine, mayors talk about police reform, public safety, police community relations. We talk about them all the time with each other. And so through groups that I'm affiliated with and connected with, U.S. Conference of Mayors, the mayors and police chiefs organizations that we participate in, this is a topic that we talk about all the time. I'm not sure that any one city has gotten it right. I envision Columbus leading the way, but taking best practices and insights from around the country as to how we can continue to make sure that the Division of Police meets and exceeds the community's expectations. And so we will be looking around the country at best practices, but I also know that there are transformational leaders out there that could come to help lead our division to where the community expects. Tom.
Mayor, you keep saying change the culture in the Division of Police. What specifically needs to change?
Well, when you're talking about changing culture, it's obviously very complex and in-depth, but one of the things that we really need to make sure isn't what I feel. I think you go back and look at the Matrix report and findings and see, after thousands of interviews with officers, civilians in the department and the division, and the community members, that there are huge disparities in experiences for officers of color, women, gay, lesbian, transgender officers, and they've seen huge disparities in interactions between the Division of Police and folks in the community. That all, I think, speaks to culture. And it's critically important that we have a division that treats and supports and protects folks from all different walks of life that are serving within the organization, and is setting the standard for their interaction with the public in a city that is becoming more and more diverse. And we know we're going to grow by another third over the next 30 years. I think all of those things speak to culture, as well as oversight, accountability, transparency. Those are all elements of culture that we definitely need to improve upon internally. Our last question, because I have to go do other things, but we're happy to, if there are any other questions or follow-up, please follow up with Robin Davis in my office and we'll get you answers. But our last question goes to Lacey Crisp.
Thank you, Mayor. So you talk about a change of culture. Is there also a focus on crime? There's about double the homicides so far in Columbus this year as there was last year when we set the record. I also want to know if you've reached out to any of the applicants from the last go-round.
We'll take the last question first because that's easy. No. Yes, obviously I'm looking for someone who has experience in helping communities become safer, stronger, healthier relationships between the Division of Police and the community. Someone who's got a proven track record of helping to work on more comprehensive approaches with other city departments and partners in the community around preventing and intervening and reducing violence as much as fighting crime. And so clearly that'll be part of it. As you know, there are cities about Columbus's size, similar demographics, who saw very, very significant spikes in homicides and violence. It is something that is very much top of mind and will be a priority when selecting the next chief.